God's chosen ones. They defended you in the room. They tried to break you. Your life is becoming the reflection of a sacred purpose. A divine triumph is being revealed through you, God's chosen one. If you're ready to step into your sacred calling, comment 777 or 4 far below. Let it be your covenant, a holy nod to heaven's perfect timing. If you're watching this video, this isn't by accident. Your soul felt it. Long before your mind could comprehend, something has shifted. You woke up, and the weight you once carried, it didn't get lighter. It shattered. But you don't know why. Not yet. And then you felt it. Eyes watching you, but not human eyes. Heaven is watching because something has reversed. In a realm you cannot see, they once tried to destroy you. They slandered your name, mocked your silence. But hear this, the very room they tried to break you in is now the room they rise to defend you. Let that sink into your heart. Your name is being restored, and you didn't even have to speak. Heaven just flipped the script, and it flipped in your favor. You were never forgotten. You were being forged. Welcome to the divine reversal. Chosenones. If your soul just remembered what it was never supposed to forget, you are not just here. You are being called. You were betrayed, not by strangers, but by the very ones you once believed would pray beside you. You were misunderstood. You sat silent in a room full of laughter, where your name was the centerpiece of conversation. They didn't wait for your explanation, because they never intended to hear it. They believed the lie, while you bled the truth in silence. Do you remember the message you sent that was never answered? The moment they looked straight into your eyes and still turned away. The night you cried yourself empty, only to smile the next morning so no one would worry. They thought your stillness meant weakness. They called you fake because you stayed calm. But what they never understood was your silence wasn't surrender. It was the choice of a soul stronger than the pain. You didn't expose them. You didn't call them out. You simply stepped back and let God write the next chapter. And that very silence is what made you someone heaven could trust. Have you ever felt like that? Pushed to the edge just for being real? If you have, you are not alone. You were never weak. You were being fortified. You're not fragile. You were being forged. To carry a name not everyone is strong enough to bear. The chosen one. Come on, amen. I'm still standing if you've ever kept silent, but never bowed. Part 1. The flip. Heaven flipped the script, and it flipped in your favor. But you felt it. Something not of this world shifted quietly. No warning. No strange dreams. No thunder from the sky. Just a morning. You opened your eyes, and something inside your chest broke open. But not in a way that shattered you. It felt like release. You didn't know how to explain it. You couldn't just call up a friend and say, "Hey, I think something just changed in the spirit realm." But your soul knew. It wasn't sadness leaving. It was bondage breaking. It didn't feel like happiness. It felt like you'd been wearing a coat 3 sizes too small for years. And suddenly, without anyone saying a word, it was gone. You could breathe. And for the first time, you realized what real breathing felt like. Have you been waking up at lately, crying into your lunch with no idea why? Or maybe old memories playing in your mind like someone hit rewind. That's not coincidence. That's the flip. They don't know what you've walked through. They didn't see you, head buried in a pillow, asking God, "How long do I have to stay silent?" You didn't speak up, not because you couldn't, but because you knew. There's a deeper truth that speaks louder than words. And then heaven said, "Enough." From that moment, things began to shift, not loudly, not obviously, but the curses placed upon your name began to crack. The ones who laughed at you grew strangely quiet. Doors that slammed in your face suddenly creaked open, and your name, started to echo in rooms you've never even stepped into. Heaven flipped the script, and it flipped in your favor. You've probably asked yourself, does anyone even see what's happening to me? You endured. You stayed silent. You didn't fight to restore your reputation because you trusted that someone would speak for you in the right time. That time is now. No, this is not revenge. This is sacred restoration. God doesn't hurt others to lift you up, but He will shake the things that once stood over you to raise you into position. You were once the one overlooked. Now you are the voice. You were pushed away from the table, but heaven is setting a feast before your enemy. You might be thinking, but I didn't do anything to deserve this. That right there is why you were chosen. The chosen ones aren't picked because they're perfect, but because they were faithful when no one else was watching. You didn't rebel. You didn't retaliate. You didn't use your pain to poison others. You chose silence, and heaven calls that the strongest weapon of all. Have you ever had a day where your heart felt lighter and you couldn't explain why? Comment, I felt the flip if you see yourself in these words. If you've ever been misunderstood but still chose kindness, comment, I stood for the truth. Do you remember that night you didn't want to keep living? No texts came through, no one checked in, and you thought, if I disappear, would anyone notice? Heaven noticed, not just watched. Heaven recorded every sob, every whispered prayer spoken into darkness. You thought you were abandoned, but you were actually being positioned. They pushed you out of the room. They looked at you, whispered about you, gave you names you never gave yourself. And now, the same rooms are saying your name again, but this time with gratitude, because what you carried then is what they're craving now. They once called you strange, too deep, too much. Now they say there's just something right about them. They don't say it out loud, but they know. You saw something before they were mature enough to recognize it. Wow! Some of you are trembling right now, not because these words are eloquent, but because your spirit has just confirmed this is true. You're not imagining things. You're not too sensitive. You carry heaven's frequency. You don't have to be loud because you are the wave. You don't have to stand out because you are the light. You were the one they blamed, but you never had to defend yourself because God is your advocate. You were the one no one believed, but now they're piecing together the truth and saying, maybe they were telling the truth all along. Lies shout, but truth? Truth waits for the right time. What's happening in your life right now isn't random. It's the result of unseen faithfulness. Heaven saw it, and now heaven flipped the script. If this part touched your heart, don't stay quiet. Come on. I felt the flip. My name is being restored. Or simply 777 to mark the moment you were called. Because you're not just a listener. You are living proof that when heaven speaks, nothing can hold you back. Part 2. The silent fire. You stood in the furnace and let the flames reveal who you were made of. Some pain makes no sound, not because it's light, but because it's buried so deep, there are no words left to cry out. And you know that feeling better than anyone. They looked at you, they saw your silence. No angry posts, no dramatic explanation, no confrontation. And they thought, maybe they're guilty. Maybe they're just scared. But if only they knew. You stood in the fire, not to be consumed, but to reveal what you were truly made of. Because you understood. Fire doesn't burn ashes. It makes gold shine. You didn't do anything wrong. You just lived honestly, and your honesty made them uncomfortable. So they built a story, not because you were bad, but because you were more real than they could handle. They couldn't manipulate you, and people they can't control. They often try to destroy. You've sat alone. Haven't you? Reading between the lines of what was said behind your back. not on social media, but in group chats, in hesitant words from old friends, and you knew they were twisting you just subtly enough that if you fought back, it would only make you look worse. You typed, you deleted, typed again, deleted again, and finally, you stayed silent, not because you were weak, but because you refused to let their fire touch your soul. Silence wasn't your surrender. It was your submission, but not to man, to God. You knew you could have spoken. You could have exposed the truth. You had the proof. You had the memories. You held the facts. But you also knew if truth needs to be forced to survive, maybe it isn't the whole truth yet. Have you ever chosen silence when every part of you was screaming to be understood? Have you ever felt like you were being burned alive by words that weren't true? If so, come on. I stood in the fire, but I didn't burn. Because in that moment, you didn't need to win. You just needed to keep your peace. You chose silence because you understood there is something more sacred than reputation. A clean heart. You stood in the furnace and let the flames reveal who you were made of. You didn't run. You didn't rant. You didn't post revenge. You let heaven finish the story. You've wished you weren't so sensitive, haven't you? You've wondered why you feel things so deeply, why your heart breaks while others lie with ease. Because you're not ordinary. You are chosen. Your soul cannot tolerate dishonesty because you were created to carry light. Your silence became a fortress. They mistook your quiet for weakness, but it wasn't a void. It was your foundation. They kept talking. You kept standing. They twisted your story. You didn't fall. They labeled you. You chose kindness anyway. And one day, they started comparing. And what they saw was that the other's words changed with emotion, but your actions never shifted with the seasons. They started to see some who once believed the lies now sit beside you, not speaking. But you feel the silent apology in their eyes. And strangely, you feel no bitterness, only peace, because you know fire doesn't just destroy, it refines. An unspoken praise.
God saw you stay quiet.
And he made note. You didn't grab the mic because you knew he'd place you on the stage when the time was right, not to spotlight you, but to show the world. This is the one who didn't retaliate. This is the one who didn't shout, yet still was raised. That is your testimony. If you've ever been misunderstood, slandered, isolated for being real, and if you chose silence because you trusted that God would speak for you in his time. Come on. I walked through fire, or I chose silence and God chose me. Why your silence mattered. You didn't lose yourself trying to prove yourself. You didn't let your pain turn you into someone who hurts others. And that is why you're now trusted with greater things. You are not a victim. You are a warrior who once stood in the middle of the fire and did not burn. Part 3. The Trinity of Deception. They weren't messy, they were coordinated spiritual agents. There are seasons in life when everything seems to fall apart at once. You lost friends. Your reputation crumbled. The one you loved turned their back. And the lies, the lies, spread faster than the truth you had carried with care for years. At first, you thought it was just drama. You blamed yourself. Maybe I'm just too sensitive. You lay awake at night, replaying every word you said, trying to find where you went wrong. But deep down, your soul whispered, this isn't random. You thought it was emotional, a misunderstanding, something psychological. But it wasn't. It was an organized assault, a spiritual hit. 3 people, 3 roles, 1 shared mission. To break you before you could step fully into your divine assignment. They weren't messy, they were coordinated spiritual agents. 1. The twister of truth. They didn't lie outright. They adjusted the truth. They told the facts but framed them with a tone that made you sound unhinged. They told of your anger, but not of the betrayal that caused it. They said you were controlling, but conveniently skipped how they once exploited your kindness. They gave all the details, but stripped the story of its soul. And they told that story again and again to one person in particular, your divine counterpart. And yes, for a time, it worked. You saw it in their eyes. How trust faded into doubt, then into distance. You didn't know why. You just felt yourself being written out of a story you once starred in. And the worst part, you weren't allowed to defend yourself. Because who wants to make a scene, right? Have you ever been cast in a role that never belonged to you? I'm not the character they wrote for me. 2. The jealous shadow in Friends clothing. They called you an inspiration while copying everything you did. They said they were proud while dragging your name behind your back. They didn't want to be like you. They wanted to replace you. You shared your healing, and suddenly, they had a healing journey too. You spoke in your unique language, and they echoed it, but hollow, without the soul. They didn't compete directly. They made you feel guilty for shining. They cultivated an atmosphere where you shrunk yourself to make them more comfortable. No one said it out loud, but you saw it. They couldn't handle the light you carried. You asked yourself, am I just being paranoid? No, you were just too bright to not see what they tried to hide. And your divine counterpart, they couldn't see it. They saw that friend as your supporter, not realizing they were quietly rooting for your fall. But one day, the mask slipped, not because you exposed them, but because anger leaked. A glance gave it away. A tone broke the illusion, and your counterpart finally began to see. Come on, I will not apologize for my light. If you've ever dimmed yourself to avoid making others feel small, through the collector who came to wound, this one is the most dangerous. They came to you as compassion. They asked questions. They nodded. They listened deeply. You trusted them. You opened up. You shared stories you'd never told anyone. Your past, your pain, your vulnerabilities. But behind your back, they were copying and pasting your secrets into someone else's hands to dissect you like a lab experiment. They didn't care. They were never moved. They were only gathering ammunition. And then, one day, you heard your own sacred truths thrown back in your face from the mouth of a stranger. You weren't even shocked anymore, just cold, numb, sickened by how your kindness was betrayed. You realized you didn't say too much. You just said it to the wrong person. Come on. I've learned not everyone comes to listen. If you've ever trusted someone who used your pain as a weapon, this was never drama. This was spiritual warfare. When you line up all three, you see it clearly. They weren't chaotic. They were coordinated. The twister manipulated the narrative. The jealous one poisoned the energy around you. The collector armed the other two. And there you were, in the center of it all. No way to explain. No one on your side. Except God. But no, you're not crazy. You were targeted because you carry an assignment darkness can't afford to see completed. You are the light, sent to expose the shadows. They thought they were exposing you, but it was they who were revealed. Your divine counterpart is starting to see it, not because you proved it, but because their illusion collapsed. Now they wonder, why were those same people always talking about you? Why did they need so badly for you to be the villain? And finally, they realize the only one who never manipulated me was the one I walked away from. If you've ever been isolated, manipulated, or quietly attacked by a group that looked polished on the outside, come on, I'm not crazy. I was targeted, or I saw the Trinity of deception, and I'm still standing. Because you weren't just a casualty in a spiritual ambush. You were a threat, and heaven is not finished with you yet. Part 4. The Great Betrayal. They stood with your enemies while you bled truth in silence. You can handle being misunderstood by strangers. You can forgive harsh words from people who know nothing about you. You can even smile through the lies whispered by a crowd. But there's something deeper than pain, that you don't even know how to speak of. It's when the person you love the most turns away. Not just turns away, but stands beside those who want to see you fall. You used to pray with them. You and this person, your divine counterpart, once bowed your heads together in prayer. You dreamed together, spoke of destiny, shared the language of heaven. You knew they were sent to walk this sacred path with you. You trusted, you opened, you let them see your soul scars and all. And then they believed the voice of a liar. They didn't have to say much, just a colder glance, a message left unseen, a silence when your name was dragged in slander. And in that moment, you realized they were no longer on your side. Have you ever felt that when your heart is screaming, "Don't believe them, believe me," but the one you trusted the most stood still, turned their back? Come on. I once stood alone in the truth. If you've ever felt the sting of abandonment from someone who once held your hand in prayer, you were betrayed by the one who was supposed to protect you. They knew you were hurting. They could feel it. But they still chose to listen to someone else's voice instead of the heartbeat that once matched theirs. They watched your silence and mistook it for guilt. They didn't understand. Your silence was holy. It was faith in God's justice. They stood with your enemies while you bled truth in silence. You didn't rage. You didn't retaliate. You just shattered quietly. Because when a stranger wounds you, you hurt. But when someone you love does it, you lose your direction. It wasn't just the rejection. It was the ache of knowing they knew my heart and still didn't believe me. You've woken up in the middle of the night, clutching your chest, feeling like you'd been stabbed from behind. You've stared at unanswered messages, knowing full well they were listening to the wrong version of your story. And still, you said nothing, not because you were weak, but because you still hoped, still prayed. One day, they'll see. You once said, "We're a team." You once promised, "I'll never stand against you." You believed, "They're the one person who'll never doubt me." But they let someone else put a question mark on your most sacred truth, right while you were bleeding from holding your divine vow. God allowed it, not to break you, but to purify you. Because true love doesn't walk away based on someone else's opinion. Have you ever trusted someone so deeply that you thought they'd never leave? Have you ever watched them walk away and didn't chase them because you honored their freedom? Come on. I didn't hold them back. I handed them to God. God saw, and he never slept on it. You never had to prove anything. You didn't need to clear your name. God saw it all. The times you shielded their dignity while they allowed others to strip yours. The times you prayed for them, even as their silence tore you apart. The times you refused to speak ill, simply because you still loved them. And that is why you were chosen. They walked away from you, but they didn't walk away from destiny. They thought leaving you was the end of it. But no, they stepped out of an anointed alignment. You weren't just someone they dated. You were a divine assignment, and their rejection ripped them from the flow of heaven's original design. They didn't know that when they stood with your enemies, they were unknowingly standing against their own calling. If this part pierced your heart, let your soul speak. Comment? They left me, but I didn't lose myself. I gave the one I loved to the one who loves me more. You survived the sacred betrayal. And now, the next chapter begins. The moment the one who turned away starts to wake up. Part 5. The Awakening. They didn't just apologize, they were activated. Not everyone who betrayed you was evil. Some were just temporarily blind. And sometimes, heaven doesn't argue with blindness. It lets the darkness touch them. The one who walked away from you. They kept living, kept laughing, kept posting, but slowly. Pieces started to fall. They felt exhaustion for no reason. Trusted friends disappeared without warning. Doors closed. Paths blurred. Dreams repeated strange and unshakable. And in those dreams, you were there, but you weren't angry. You didn't punish. You simply stood still silent, and somehow, your eyes alone made them fall to their knees. Then they began to hear the very words they once ignored. Something's not right with this person. I'm not trying to control you. I'm trying to protect you. Not everyone who listens to you loves you. And they woke up, soaked in sweat, no longer laughing, because they knew something had broken open. Have you ever felt a sudden knowing that someone who left you just had their soul shaken awake? Come on, I know their soul is waking up. Or they haven't come back, but they've started to see. Awakening doesn't begin with logic, but with pain. At first, they chalked it up to bad luck. They were betrayed the way they once doubted you were. They were gossiped about like they once did behind your back. They were abandoned by the very group they once defended. The pain you once endured became the pain they now carried in their own skin. And slowly, memory returned. The times you gently warned, the times you fell silent just to keep the peace, the times you blessed them, even while being pushed away. They didn't just remember, they felt you. They looked at their current circle and realized the script felt eerily familiar. The one they trusted most was manipulative. The one they protected was using them. And they finally saw you weren't jealous. You weren't trying to control. You simply saw the danger before they could. No one had to explain it to them. You didn't need to send a message. You didn't need to send them this video. They looked at their crumbling life and whispered, I turned my back on the one who actually loved me. They didn't just apologize, they were activated. They didn't return to love you like before. They came back to repair what they once betrayed. If you believe that the one who turned away from you is now on their path to awakening, come on. I'm not waiting, but I forgave them long ago. They saw what you didn't do. They saw that you could have exposed the liar, could have stirred chaos, could have used the truth as a weapon. But you didn't, because you loved them more than your own pride. And that hit their soul harder than any confrontation ever could. They didn't understand why you never fought back. Now they do, because you surrendered it all to God. This awakening isn't about romance, it's about calling. They're not returning to beg for love. They're returning because their divine purpose is calling them back. Now, when they look at you, they see someone who stood in truth while being lied about, someone who stayed silent while being misunderstood, someone who prayed while being abandoned. They now realize you weren't just a lover, you were a bearer of the light they once rejected. If you ever forgave in silence, if you waited not for them to come back, but for them to finally see the truth. Come on. I forgave long ago because I love from the soul. They didn't just apologize. They were awakened. This is no longer a love story. This is a return of a lost part of the soul. And you're not waiting. You're moving forward. But they're running not after you, but after the truth you once stood for. Part 6, the public defense. Your name is being restored in rooms where it was once cursed. You used to dream of the day someone would finally stand up and say, you were wrong about them. That's not who they are. But then you learned a painful truth. True justice doesn't come from the mouths of people. It comes from the hands of God. And because you never demanded to be defended, when that defense arrived, it carried the weight of heaven. You weren't in the room, but your name was. You're no longer present in the places where they once mocked you. But your presence lingers. Because now, someone is speaking on your behalf. Someone who once believed the lie. Someone who stayed silent when you were being condemned. Someone who once looked at you through the lens of suspicion. Now, they've become the trumpet a witness, a warrior for the truth. They're speaking up in the very spaces that once betrayed you, at family dinners, in team meetings, among the old friend groups that once turned cold. No more deflecting, no more pretending. Now they say, you were all wrong about her. I was wrong too. But I see clearly now, and I won't be silent anymore. It's not because they love you, it's because they fear God. This defense isn't born of emotion, it's born of spiritual trembling. They're not standing up for you out of pity. They're standing up because silence has become too heavy to bear. They once turned their back on truth, and the cost was the unraveling of their own peace. Have you ever longed to be vindicated, but then learned to release the need for it? If you're sensing that someone who once doubted you is starting to see clearly, come on. I don't need to explain. Truth is rising on its own. They're not just talking, they're repairing. They're not coming to you to apologize. They're going to them, the ones who hurt you, and undoing every word, one sentence at a time. She's not crazy. She saw it before we did. He wasn't controlling. He was trying to protect me from myself. I misunderstood, not them. Your name is being restored in rooms where it was once cursed. Now, the bricks that built the wall of falsehood are being torn down, not by you, but by the very hands that once helped build it. They've realized you stayed silent to spare them. And now, they can no longer bear your silence, because that silence has become a mirror to their conscience. You never retaliated, and every word you didn't say now echoes in their spirit, louder than anything you could have spoken. They're using the same voice that once wounded to heal. They once kept quiet to keep the peace, but now they can't tolerate the fake peace any longer. Something has awakened in them. A holy responsibility. They're saying, I can't let them keep believing the lie about her. I can't play blind when I've finally seen the light. Have you ever thought no one would stand for you? And now you feel someone is changing. Come on. I don't need to shout. Truth has started to speak. Honor is being restored without you asking. You didn't post a status. You didn't beg for fairness. You chose the higher path, silence and a clean heart. And because of that, your honor is not just being returned. It's being declared. She was right. I was wrong to doubt him. She's not the person we made her out to be. These words aren't just damage control. They are the seeds of repentance. Heaven doesn't restore in secret. Heaven restores in public. God didn't just quietly validate you. He stirred those who once laughed at you to now speak for you. You didn't demand justice, but now you're receiving sacred justice. If you've been through the fires of misunderstanding, if you've learned to stop proving and start trusting, and now you sense something, some divine restoration without your striving. Come on. My name is being restored. Truth doesn't need me to scream, it's speaking on its own. Because heaven is not only your witness, heaven is now your voice. Part 7. Pat into the collapse. Lies don't age well under the light of truth. Truth isn't in a hurry. Truth doesn't shout, but when it comes, it does not ask permission. It doesn't need an invitation from the storyteller who twisted it. It doesn't need a Stasia. It only needs time and light. And right now, you're standing in that time, not your collapse, but theirs, the collapse of every lie that once tried to cover you. Old messages are resurfacing. A story retold doesn't match up. The liar contradicting themselves without realizing. Everything is starting to fall apart. Quietly, but clearly, hauntingly. Lies don't age well under the light of truth. You didn't need revenge, you just needed peace. There was a time you wanted justice. You thought, if I just explain myself, if I show the receipts, but instead, you let go. And strangely, everything started to expose itself. No one came to your rescue. No one stepped in. Only one thing remained faithful, a divine law that truth cannot stay buried forever. Have you noticed lately? Truth is rising on its own. Someone begins to see your innocence, and you didn't even say a word. Come on, truth is speaking for me now. Or, I didn't expose them, the light did. The false can't hold together for long. They used to laugh. They performed. They painted you as unstable, too sensitive, controlling, but now they can't remember which lie they told to whom. Their answers shift every time. The ones they once manipulated begin to whisper. Something feels off, and then a slip of the tongue. A resurfaced message. A witness speaks up out of nowhere, and like dominoes, everything collapses. You stand there, not gloating, not reacting, just quietly smiling, because your soul whispers, "This is justice I never had to demand." They're starting to rethink everything. You didn't make a speech. You didn't defend yourself. But those who once believed the lie are now reviewing everything. They see you're still living with integrity. Your eyes back then weren't the eyes of a guilty person. The other party spoke too much. You said very little. And now they realize truth never needed a defense. It only needed time, light, and your quiet consistency. The unstoppable unraveling. Then one day, you get a message. Not long, not dramatic. Just that, "I'm sorry, I see it now. You weren't the one in the wrong." And the tears fall, not because you're broken, but because your silence finally spoke. You never demanded justice because you are justice. You are not a victim. You are the living evidence that, when you refuse to wrestle with darkness, light always wins. Have you ever wanted to react, but chose peace instead? And now you're watching the reversal, and you didn't have to say a thing. Come on, I kept quiet, and heaven handled the rest. This collapse isn't for you, it's for them to see. They once stood on the wrong side. Now they say nothing, not out of fear of you, but fear of being found out. But truth doesn't stop. It keeps breaking through the walls they built. Why didn't I see it then? Why was I so quick to believe them? I turned my back on someone who only ever did right by me. And piece by piece, every word, every behavior, every rumor starts to peel off like dead skin. Lies don't age well under the light of truth. You never needed to strike back, you just needed to shine. You are the light. They tried to dim you, but they forgot. True light doesn't scream to be seen. It simply shows up, and everything false starts to wither. If you're entering the season where truth is rising without your effort, come on, truth is going ahead of me. Lies don't survive in the light, because heaven is not just defending you, heaven is revealing you. Part 8, the prophetic compensation. What was stolen must be returned sevenfold. It's not that you forgot. It's not that you got over it. You simply learned to keep walking, with a hole in your heart still quietly bleeding. Yes, you forgave, but your soul never stopped remembering what was taken. Your honor, your opportunities, your relationships, and the years you lived in silence, in pain, without a single defender. And then you heard that sacred voice thunder through your spirit. What was stolen must be returned sevenfold. Everything you lost is coming back. Not all at once, not with noise, but unmistakably. A door opens and you didn't even knock. Someone who once stayed silent now reaches out, apologizing, offering opportunity. A divine connection appears right when you've stopped expecting anything at all. And suddenly, you know, this isn't coincidence. This is prophetic compensation. Have you been sensing that things are starting to return in ways you never anticipated? Come on. I'm being repaid not by hands of man, but by the hand of God. Compensation didn't come from the one who hurt you. You once longed for their return. You thought an apology might finally make the pain go away. But now, you know, they can't return the sleepless nights. They can't restore the tears you wiped away alone. They can't rewind the years you spent enduring in silence. But God can, and God is, sevenfold restoration. not because you deserved it, but because you were chosen. You're not more worthy than others, but you were faithful, even when no one clapped. You kept your heart clean, even when no one saw, and heaven took note, not with applause, but with action. The door that once rejected you now opens, because someone else recommended your name. The project that was shut down, now fully funded, no explanation needed. The reputation they tore apart, now being restored by the very ones who once doubted you. You weren't just repaid, you were elevated. What was taken is returning with heaven's interest. Someone once pushed you out of a place. Now you're being invited into something greater. Someone once denied you. Now others call you the answer they've been waiting for. And your spirit whispers, this can't be manufactured by PR. This is heaven's appointment. Are you sensing a reversal, where what was lost or closed is suddenly flowing back in? Come on, what was stolen must be returned sevenfold. You didn't pay money for this. You paid with tears. You didn't manipulate your way to restoration. You simply lived righteously. You didn't try to convince anyone. You didn't beg for validation. You just kept walking, and heaven kept counting. You once cried alone. Now your name is being honored in public. You were once excluded. Now the same voices are calling you in. And deep in your soul, you know, no human could have done this. Only God. This prophetic compensation isn't just for you, it's for who comes after you. What's being restored to you isn't just to make you feel better. It's a prophetic sign. To every soul suffering in silence like you once did, you are becoming a living witness of spiritual justice, a sign that silence is not weakness, a symbol that faithfulness is never wasted. Have you suffered loss and now feel heaven repaying in quiet, powerful waves? Come on, I'm receiving what was once stolen. Or, I'm not being repaid by man, but by my Creator. Because when God says sevenfold, no lie, no delay, and no person can stop what's about to be returned to your life. Part 9. The transfer begins. You didn't climb a ladder, you were carried by grace. You are not who you used to be, not because you reinvented yourself, but because something shifted in the spiritual realm, and your position was changed. You weren't favored. You were appointed. A new position without a single explanation. There was no ranking system, no application, no interview call. Just one day, you woke up, and every eye that once looked through you started to turn toward you, not with suspicion, but with reverence. You are no longer the one whispered about. You've become the one they turn to. You didn't climb a ladder, you were carried by grace. You no longer need to explain. Glory is doing the talking. You used to beg to be understood. You used to ache for someone to truly see your soul. But now you know, chosen souls don't have to explain, because true light introduces itself. Have you ever felt like you were placed in the wrong space? But now, something deep within you whispers, I'm finally where I was always meant to be. Come on, I didn't climb up, I was lifted by grace. You didn't have to knock, the doors open themselves. You didn't force anyone to listen. You didn't need to chase influence. You stopped defining yourself through titles. And now, the ones who once ignored you now seek your counsel. The rooms that once shut you out now send invitations. The spaces that once rejected you now depend on you to function. You didn't take a seat. You were placed in position. You weren't too much. You were built different. They used to call you too intense, too sensitive, too deep. But now, those very traits have become the reason they pause when you speak, the voice they can't replace, the light that cuts through their confusion. You didn't change to fit the world. The world had to adjust to carry your light. This transfer isn't just a role, it's a realm. This isn't about having a say. It's about carrying spiritual authority. Now, your words strike the heart. Your discernment proves true. Your very presence shifts the atmosphere of a room. You don't just influence, you are influence. Have you ever been dismissed simply because you weren't like them? And now, you were never meant to fit in. Come on, I wasn't made to blend in. I was sent to shift the room. This isn't a promotion, it's a commissioning. Others get promotions. You received an assignment. This isn't worldly success. This is spiritual placement. Where are you now? See further than most. Sense what hasn't happened yet. Carry what others can't even name. And because you remained faithful in the hidden dark, you've now been entrusted with the light. If you feel that you've just been moved, not by effort, but by grace. Come on. I didn't climb, I was carried here. I don't have to prove anything. Glory already spoke for me. Because when heaven decides it's time, no ladder is needed, only assignment and grace. Part 10. The final summons. You are not being defended. You are being declared. You are no longer an option. You are the one who was chosen. No more whispers in the dark. No more subtle signs. No more someday soon. That day is today. Heaven has spoken, and when God declares a thing, no one can revoke it. No longer hidden, no longer erased. You used to be a beautiful secret, a buried voice, the one they listened to but never acknowledged. But now, you are no longer hidden, no more silence, no more covering. You step into your rightful place, not by invitation, but by confirmation. You are not being defended. You are being declared. You didn't rise for status. You rose because you paid the price. You had no backing, no powerful voice behind you. All you had was a faithful soul, a heart that never stopped believing, a life anchored in grace. And now, God is declaring you before the world. Have you always felt like heaven's hidden one? And now, something in your spirit knows, I'm not in hiding anymore. I'm being revealed. Come on. I'm not being defended. I'm being declared. When heaven calls your name, the earth must listen. You don't need a speech. You don't need a title. You don't need a platform. Your presence announces you. Those who mocked you now revere you. Those who stayed silent now lean in. Those who walked away now remain outside the line they can no longer cross. You didn't rise to be greater. You stepped forward because the call became louder than your fear. You are not stepping up. You are stepping into. You stopped waiting for nodding heads because God already spoke. You used to wait for someone to believe in you, a lover to understand it, a family member to affirm, a friend to say, I see you, but not anymore. Because the one who sees through every layer has already called your name. You don't need to be chosen by man, because I chose you before your first breath. Have you felt yourself being announced lately? Not by social media, but by the Spirit. Come on. I have been chosen and now I'm being declared. No one can cancel the calling I carry. You're not just the right choice, you're the answer. There's no vote to be cast. You're not in competition. You are the answer to someone's prayer. You are the one who carries the solution, the one who bears healing, the only voice with the divine authority to say what needs to be said. And now, the world is being forced to acknowledge that you were once at the bottom. Now you are the foundation. You were once cast out. Now you are the open gate. You were once silent. Now you are the trumpet. The rising of the chosen one. No more someday. No more when I'm ready. No more when they accept me. Today is the day of declaration. This moment is the final summons, and you don't have to strive to prove it. You only need to step out. If you feel heaven is no longer keeping you hidden, if you know this is your moment of release, come on. This is my hour. I have been declared. I am not being defended. I am being declared. Because when God raises his voice over you, no one can silence the sound. You are not in hiding. You are in position. This is your divine reversal, and you are its evidence. You have been silent long enough. You have walked unseen. You have believed with no guarantee. And today, it's not just a video. It's not just a message. It is heaven calling your name, no longer hidden, no longer waiting, no longer seeking permission. You are now in position, ready to be revealed. You didn't just survive. You became the evidence. Evidence of justice, evidence of divine compensation, evidence of spiritual selection. And if your soul is trembling right now because it knows these are not just words, this is my final summons, then let heaven and earth bear witness. Come on, you 100 friend, I receive the reversal. This is my spiritual reversal, and I receive it. Come on, my name is being restored. My name is being restored in front of the world. Share a call to carry light. If you've ever been misunderstood, abandoned, or chose silence instead of retaliation, share this message as a soul declaration, because the time has come for you to no longer hide. You endured, you waited, you stayed in position, and now the door is open. Not because you were perfect, but because you were chosen. Thank you, God's chosen one, for staying to the end of this sacred moment. This wasn't by chance, it was heaven's timing. If this prayer stirred your spirit, let it take root. Speak life, walk boldly, trust fully. Comment 1 on 11 if you know this was a sign for you. Share if you know someone else is waiting for their restoration. And now walk like the one who's no longer being defended, but has been anointed